All right, so now we're going to talk about the difference between public and dealer auctions. So if you're using common sense, you kind of probably know with the two terminology, the names, that a public auction is strictly for the public. Now dealers can go to those auctions too. However, a public auction, everybody can attend. The rules are probably a little bit less specific. They're usually privately owned and they always have their own rules. So the pros for a public auction, you don't need a dealer license. So some of these public auctions are online auctions such as Copart. Now they may need depending on the type of car, it's a disclaimer. Depending on the type of car, you may need a license depending on the specifics on what they require. However, there are public auctions where you don't need any type of license at all. It's easy for beginners. I was a beginner, and I work with beginners that have chose public auctions, and I don't knock them at all, but a public auction is definitely a good start to be able to get your feet wet, to understand the terminology, to not have to put in a whole lot of extra overhead and time and extra. It's just a low barrier to entry, the entry world into auctions. So if that's something that you haven't done, if you haven't gotten your dealer license yet and you're wanting to learn a whole lot more as far as what goes on and you just want to get in the element, I always suggest going to a public auction, if that makes any sense. So a public auction is a good way to get in the door without the extra money that's needed. Okay, so some of the cons of a public auction, okay? And these are some of the things that you really want to pay attention to. A lot of times these buyer fees and a lot of the fees are going to be much higher than a dealer auction, okay? So, and then a lot of times, y'all, they also have extra little like rinky-dink fees that you're like, why are they even choosing? Because they can. Okay, they have these cars and that's their leverage for you to be able to get a car at a cheaper price or a cheaper fixed repair price. So they're definitely going to hit you with higher fees and higher, literally everything's going to be just a tad bit higher. So that's one thing that I've noticed is that they're going to have higher fees and they're going to have a lot more fees, and that's just the only reason why. It's because they can. It's their auction, it's money driven, and a lot of people are paying those fees. So that's just another thing that they have is much higher fees. A strong retail competition. So you're competing with other auctions, okay, and other retail sales. So that's another reason why public auctions, are kind of looked down upon. The risk of overpaying is very, very high. Again, they have these fees, and sometimes the cars that they sell are the same amount as if you was to buy them like maybe off marketplace, and maybe more expensive with more repairs. So you have to do your research. Another con to public auctions is the quality of car. A lot of times the quality of car at a public auction is not the best. A lot of people that I know that have been to public auctions, is usually the bottom of the barrel when it comes to car or value of car. So a lot of times people that have attended public auctions, they really see the difference in a dealer auction. They see the difference of quality of car. However, don't let it discourage you. Just do your research when it comes to fees, quality, and a lot of times the cars at public auction are as is. You can't bring them back. So if it's anything wrong with it, once you bid and you buy it, it's yours. And that goes for both auctions, okay? So yeah, you want to make sure you weigh out those pros and cons when it's time to go to a public auction. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the pros and cons of a dealer license, okay? So there are actual cons when it comes to a dealer license, even though it seems like there's more pros, but let's go and dive into the pros and cons, okay? Okay, so here are some of the pros of having a dealer license, okay? So first and foremost, the pricing. So everybody is all for having the best pricing. So you get wholesale pricing, obviously, with a dealer, whether it's retail or wholesale, you get the wholesale prices, right? All right, so you also get better quality. I'm not gonna knock public auctions, but at the same time, you do get a lot better quality going to a dealer auction. You also have the opportunity to arbitrate those, which is if the car doesn't hold up to what that auction says, that it's in good condition, you can, in other words, bring that car back. Now, each auction does have their own rules on how to do so, and it's up to you. It's your responsibility to make sure you understand that fine print and understand exactly what's going on, because obviously if you bid on the car, you actually win the car, it's yours. You can't, it's not much that you can do, okay? Another pro is that there's less competition. Okay, so you're in a world where it takes a few steps to get in the door. So you want to make sure that the advantage is something that you have. Another pro to a dealer license is that you do have the flexibility to have a profit margin to what will work for you. Profit is always key. So you definitely have wiggle room if you bid correctly. And that's another pro that we have when it comes to having a dealer license. So some of the cons that come with a dealer license is obviously you do have to have an actual license, and you do have to go through the steps to be able to get that license to attend those auctions. A lot of times the paperwork is a whole lot more. A public auction, you just normally have to have your actual just ID, but with a license, you do have to go through certain platforms and paperwork and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that you're legit to be able to come to this, dealer only auction. It does require a lot more strategy and discipline. So that's another thing that you want to keep in mind is being strategic and having discipline and working with no emotions. So when you go to the auctions, don't buy emotionally, buy strategically, if that makes any sense. So that's the difference between a dealer and a public auction, the pros and the cons.